All right, I'm doing a ad hoc stream tonight. Figured I'd cover some altcoins for you guys that started to make moves here this week, and I just kind of want to go through a little bit of some educational things that maybe I don't really cover on my normal streams. Things I like to look at, why I take trades, when I take trades, stuff like that. So the first things first is I always end up looking at the US dollar index as my metric for, is this a risk on environment? Should we be in risk assets right now, and why, or what is going on in the broader market, right? So the S&P, NASDAQ. For crypto is obviously a lot higher risk, a lot higher volatility than just investing in the S&P index. So you want to pay attention to the dollar index because everything is paired against dollars. So when the dollar index is losing value against other fiat currencies, that means you have dollar devaluation, and that means that risk assets can potentially climb in value because of devaluation of dollar. So as you can see right here, you can see that I plotted these ranges. This is something that you guys should always do on your charts, is always look for supports and resistances, because assets tend to always gravitate to those levels, those regions, until they break ranges. Like you can see that the dollar did break this range here when they were increasing interest rates back in 2022, and then we went sideways and we made like an attempted rally, and we made what is called a swing failure pattern or a lower high. Okay, and that was probably the time, or one of the best times, to load up on more risk assets, because the risk assets probably had a drawdown during that time period because the dollar was going up. And I would be willing to bet that Bitcoin pretty much followed suit. January was probably a topping point for Bitcoin. I'm not looking at it right at this moment, but we can look at that and kind of compare it. It runs pretty close to it. So we're looking at that was what, January of 25. So January of 25 for Bitcoin was right here. See, we actually ended up making some sort of top. Okay, and that's right. So we made some sort of top. We actually were in line with what the dollar index was doing at the time, which is actually not typical for Bitcoin. And the reason why we ended up getting exuberant like that, and we didn't have any continuation follow through when the dollar did fall down, was because of liquidity. So the global liquidity index is the other metric that you really want to be paying attention to. Bitcoin pretty much tracks global liquidity. And you can see here in January, global liquidity was actually going down with price going up. It was inverted. So this was actually a move up, probably because of political reasons like Trump coming into office, and crypto was probably one of his major focuses. And so that's kind of one deviation that we see on this chart that doesn't line up with that exactly. But I would say mostly all the other moves here against the global liquidity index pretty much followed suit. Okay, so we're going to move that to the top and kind of give you guys the rundown here. All right, so global liquidity bottomed out. Well, guess what? Bitcoin basically bottomed out right around that time. Global liquidity pushed up, Bitcoin pushed up. We got a bit of a consolidation here on global liquidity. We got a bit of consolidation here on Bitcoin. Global liquidity pushes up, Bitcoin pushes up. Another consolidation, another consolidation. You guys get the point? The breakout here, this was the breakout here. So Bitcoin actually kind of lags it. So we get this big breakout here. Bitcoin's breaking out here. Global liquidity is pausing right here. So that means maybe in a couple months, Bitcoin will probably pause here and go down or go sideways with global liquidity. All right. So Bitcoin's special because even if we're in like a bear market, if their money printer is going burr, meaning they're printing money globally, Bitcoin will probably still perform very well. Okay. And that is privy to even with interest rates being high, which is what we're in right now. We have a high interest rate environment, and the altcoins, the assets that aren't Bitcoin, really are having a difficult time performing. Okay. this stream is actually really supposed to be talking about ETH, so we're going to talk about it here. But we're going to talk about ETH now because we basically are at the tipping point with the Fed, and what they're going to start doing is probably start to print money and ease interest rates. And this got front run. This is the ETH Bitcoin chart. If you're just tuning in, if you are here in the chat, man, say what's up. We got a couple people watching the stream tonight. I know I just kind of came on ad hoc just to talk about stuff. I sometimes I do this myself in my free time, but I might as well just make it public tonight. All right. So again, we plotted the ranges, right? Bottom of the range here in December 2019, bottom of the range, came back down to it here in April. All right. April happened to be the bottom of the market, of all markets, after that whole tariff fiasco with Trump. So, but that actually just created a massive buying opportunity for Ethereum, not only against dollars, but against Bitcoin. And why do we know that this is the bottom, or a very high probability that it is the bottom? Because this is where we start to look at some technical things like relative strength index, stochastic RSI, the squeeze indicator that we built here at STP. This is one of the indicators you would get if you do subscribe to the alert calls that I give. This is an indicator that we give, okay, as part of the service. It's just a free one that I give you guys. All right. So again, if we're just trading ranges, this range from the bottom to the top is about a 342% move. That means if you rolled one Bitcoin into Ethereum at the bottom of this ratio, you would be getting, well, it's roughly 2% of a Bitcoin. So, you know, you would be getting, what is that? 0.017. So for every one Bitcoin, you're getting roughly, I'll just do some math here real quick. 1 second. 58 ETH. Okay. So if you got this 0.017 ratio for one Bitcoin, you picked up 58 Ethereum. All right. This is basically telling you that if you hold the ETH, you can almost 4x that one bit. You can almost make 4 Bitcoin on this trade. That's what it's telling you. That means that Ethereum should hypothetically get to the top of the range, which is roughly about 8%. Now, what happens if we break the top of the range? Okay. Now, you don't always get breakouts, right? In fact, you actually shouldn't even plan for that. You should just plan for it potentially going back up to the top of its range, because most of the time assets don't break out. They just trade in ranges until they break out. So this would be, if it does break out, well, you're basically plotting the bottom of the range, the top of the range, and you're just slapping that onto the top, 342%. Okay. So if it does the whole move, which typically it doesn't do the whole move on something like this, it would probably do about half the move. You're looking at about 18% of a Bitcoin, which actually is really close to this wick high, this deviation high that you made back here. Okay, so that's actually really interesting. That would be actually insane. So if Bitcoin gets to 175,000, let's just say that's where it tops out at, and ETH gets to, let's just take an average of that. 15 and 8 is 23. Okay, divided by 2 is 11 and change percent. Okay. So let's just call it 11 and change percent, 0.11. That's a $19,000 Ethereum. Okay. That's where it potentially could get to in US dollar values if they run synonymously together, which they typically do. All right. So the conservative target would be about 10K. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Always want to be more conservative on your targets, guys, and not like think crazy stuff. So we'll go to the US dollar chart on Ethereum here. It's a very nice structure. You got a top side resistance here. You got the bottom side support. And basically, you just tagged the bottom trend line here in April. That was the bottom. Okay. And we have the range plotted. You guys can see we have this range plotted here. It's very simple. It's very simple. If we're just trading the range, it's a 226% measured move on the range. All right. I would actually bring this down a little bit. This is a deviation high, range deviation. Top of the range rejected. Top of the range rejected. Are we going to get rejected on the 1, 2, third attempt? I'm going to go ahead and say unlikely. We're probably going to break the range this time. And the reason being is because the high time frame monthly momentum is just crossing up. It's got a huge momentum wave coming behind it to do this move. So it's very probable, I would say, that it actually breaks out this time around. So that's the monthly. And here's the 2-month chart, which is even higher time frame and more data to back that thesis. And if you look at the stochastic RSI on the 2-month, you actually have a higher low being put in with a lower low on price that you made, which is a massive bullish divergence on momentum. This is suggesting a parabolic movement coming for Ethereum against the dollar. Okay, that's what it's suggesting. Yeah, we got a few people on the stream. You guys want to post something in here? Let me know if you guys are here or what's happening. Figured that if you guys have any questions, man, drop it in the chat. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. All right. So, okay, well, when is it going to do the move? When is it going to break out? That's when you kind of want to go to like the daily time frames here and kind of see what's happening. So the daily time frame right now is actually very overbought. So it is very possible for Ethereum right now to, maybe consolidate up here or even pull back a little bit from the top of this range. We might even come back down to like 3,200, make some higher low here and go sideways a bit into August, and then going into September, October sometime, we actually get this breakout. Okay, because you can see here we went sideways on this range for about 60 days, so that's 2 months. So we could actually consolidate now for about 2 months. It's very possible that we do that. So that brings us into September. And that actually lines up with when the Fed decides to cut rates. So that's very interesting. That would create a very risk-on environment once that happens. Okay, so you could be looking at a September breakout for Ethereum, and that's probably when everything is going to be exploding to the upside. So sometimes you gotta think about macro stuff too when looking at these charts. But obviously, looking at high time frames, you don't necessarily always need to look at the macro. But the macro is important because that's what the driver is. That's the driving mechanism for the altcoins, right? Liquidity is number one. Liquidity is number one. If they're going to start printing money and they're going to start cutting rates, people are going to want to be completely risk on because that's going to create more dollar devaluation. And then, of course, for Bitcoin, it's global liquidity. It's not so much them cutting rates and liquidity coming in like that, because Bitcoin always sucks up the liquidity from the money printing that's going on. We just showed you guys that. Okay, that's why Bitcoin is special, because it's not reliant on the Fed so much. Okay, but yeah, Bitcoin will also continue to explode when the US starts printing money, because that's adding to the M2 global money supply. So it's like steroids for Bitcoin. It's just creating a massive risk-on environment for Ethereum and other altcoins as well. All right. So I figured I'd just come on here and give you guys a little bit of my insight as to where I think these markets are headed next couple months here. I think there's lots of upside potential to come with those high time frame confirmations like that. I think those high time frame confirmations don't come very often, and when they do, it is go time for risk assets, and this is the time to really make a lot of money. Remember, I'm just a chart analyst. I'm not a financial advisor or anything. Only take risk with whatever you can afford to do so with. And there's never a guarantee for a result either. Okay. But again, with high probabilities like this, there is a really good chance that this thing is going to go a lot higher in the coming months. And I figured I'd come on here and talk about it with you guys. So that's kind of my spiel for tonight. If you guys, are new to the channel, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Take the notification bell. You guys should check out our Discord channel. You guys can check that out. That's in the link in the description below. And we'll catch you guys on Sunday for the next video. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you guys Sunday for our next live stream.